Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat is a moment in time that makes the Jewish people distinct. It's a time that gestures towards creation in all its shades and hues. Shabbat is about the power of difference. This week, as we celebrated International Women's Day, we celebrated the power of our differences before the backdrop of our Parsha, Ki Tisa, the story of the golden calf. And this image of metallurgy, the shaping of a golden idol, reminds me of a Talmudic teaching. The rabbis imagined God as a coin minter who mints each human being from the same mold used with the first person, Adam HaRishon. Now, a human coin minter, the Talmud teaches, might use this same mold, and every time it's filled, it produces an exact replica of the coin they made before. But when God fills the mold again and again to create each person, every time the coin is different. God, as a minter, breathes in some unique piece of the sacred into every human being, the Ruach Elohim, the divine life force. We are all made B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God, and that Tselem, it's a little piece of us that still managed to be different despite our coin molds, and thus it is sacred. In Parshat Ki Tisa, the sacred difference informs how God approaches the task of making holy community. This is before the golden calf incident. God looks at what makes each Israelite special and the special wisdom they hold because of these differences. Take Aaron, for example. He has a unique ability to speak to people's spiritual needs. So God commands him to father the priesthood. But when it comes to building the tabernacle, God's future dwelling place on earth, God turns to Bezalel, the craftsman, an artisanal master, which sets him apart and guides and shapes the construction of the Mishkan, God's dwelling place on earth. Now later on, our Parsha shares the disastrous story of the golden calf. The impatient Israelites betray God and turn to a mold of their own hands. Nothing about it embodies that precious human difference. No care goes into its production. The mold was cast, and the human minter forged a statue just like every other idol in the Middle East at that time. Just like our human coins, all the same. The sin of the golden calf, to build and pray for a world we cut out from a mold that extinguishes the spirit that lives amidst our differences, a standard without women's voices, without voices beyond the mold. On Shabbat, we have an opportunity to stop, reflect, and reimagine the kind of world we build and the world we want to live in. And this week, International Women's Day gestured towards such a reimagined world. In this world, the voices of women no longer remain in ubiquitous silence. In this world, the voices of leaders like Miriam, the prophetess, raise the voices of others, empower difference, and forge strength from inclusion over the mindless idol of exclusion. My name is Rabbi Mira Weller, and tonight I join with Rabbi Julie Carroll, Cantor Sheena DeLoe, our cantorial intern, soon-to-be cantor, Emily Short, music director J. David Williams, and of course our fearless musicians, Corey and John. And together we will make rich sounds that echo that Tselem Elohim, that image of God. So we'll begin our services now with the Shabbat candle lighting, reminding us of that sacred light within us, that Tselem Elohim, the light of our differences, the light of renewal, the light of Shabbat. I'd love to invite Emily forward, Cantor Short, to light our candles. This week we celebrated. She is going to join Congregation Beth Emeth with my predecessor, Rabbi Greg Weitzman. It's very exciting. We can find our Shabbat blessings on page 2 in the Siddur or on the walls of our synagogue.
אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו להדליק נר של Shabbat.
We'll continue with Lachuna Ranana on page 12 or on the walls of our synagogue. For Lechadodi, and when we get to the final verse, we'll rise at the final verse and turn towards the door to bow as we invite in the Shabbat bride with Boi Kala, Boi Kala. Page 20.
Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki hi mekor v'racha, merosh mikedem nesucha, sof ma'aseh b'machshavat tchila, lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat, lecha v'la, lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat. Hittoreri,
גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה, לך דודי, לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי, לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
We continue with our call to worship the Baruch Hu on page 28 or on the walls of our sanctuary. Remain standing.
Lie, 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 lie,
Standing for the Shema.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha ug'shartam le'ot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'visharecha leman tiskeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim lelohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lihiot lachem lelohim ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem emet.
What kind of leader has the vision to usher an endangered infant into the hands of royalty just from a basket of reeds? What kind of leader brings an enslaved people from chained sorrows to boundless joy? Who could nourish a people stranded in the wilderness for a lifetime? Our rabbis understood Miriam to be such a leader. In one midrash, Miriam stands on the bank of the Nile as she lays her brother in the basket of reeds. And in that watery reflection, she sees an emerging leader, as that leader that draws a people across the sea's parted waters. Miriam gathers the women together in song and devotion. They transform into a people with joyful purpose. And above all, our midrashim relate the story of Miriam's well, which followed the people of Israel through the vast and arid deserts, irrigating the lives of those weary travelers, and once again, letting life flourish. As my own namesake, I've always felt connected to Miriam. She's one of the only women in the Torah to receive the title of Neviah, prophetess. Our sages depict her as full-bodied, complex, human, and bold. When we remember her leadership and the leadership of so many women in the Torah, we recall forgotten sources of power within all of us. Miriam embodies the power of joy, tenderness, and welcoming that can usher a broken people into healing and redemption. We will sing Miriam's song it's on page 40. It's the Micha Mocha.
On the wall.
On the wall.
One which sang our history. With every strand and every thread, she crafted her delight. A woman touched with spirit, she dances towards the light. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing a song to the one who we've exalted. Miriam and the women dance and dance the whole night long.
She soon came to believe, without ever thought that sea would part with an outstretched hand, and we would pass to freedom on the dry land.
And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing a song to the one who we've exalted. Miriam and the women dance and dance the whole night long. Took her timbrel in her hand, and all the women followed her just as she had planned. And Miriam raised her voice in song, she sang with praise and might. We've just lived through a miracle, we're gonna dance tonight. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing a song to the one who we've exalted. Miriam and the women dance and dance the whole night long.
Don't encourage me. We continue with our prayer for sacred shelter, the Hashkiveno. You can find the words on the walls of our sanctuary or on page 42 in your Sidurim.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom V'hamideinu shomreinu l'chaim. Spread the shelter
place of sacred shelter, we can take a moment to think of healing. We can think of healing of the mind, body, and spirit, and those in our lives who need our prayers. This week, our congregation is praying for the health of Sandy Sarabin, Tracy Lustig, Cassie Lustig, Michael Umans, Eli Morrison, Paulette Cohane, Patricia Horn, Louise Weisbord, Stephanie Lasher, Jane Wiesen, Stephen Schwinder, Perry Suskin, Richard Carver, Shira Aleza, Yosef Chaim Ben Chaviva, Ricky Dessen, Robert Appel, Svi Leschitz, Ellen Bask, Mark Miller, Esther Batsura, Shmuel Ben Miriam, and Marvin Sagor. I now will extend my hand, gesturing towards each of you, and if there's someone you're thinking of that you'd like to share and for our community to pray for, please share their name as you see my hand. Any remaining names I haven't seen yet? All right, the Misha Berach is on page 253 of the Siddur and on the walls of our sanctuary.
To make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misheberach imotenu mekor habracha. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
We now invite the community to please rise as you are able as we turn to our Amidah, beginning on page 46.
Adonai Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Kolei Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, U'mevii Geula livnei bneihem, Leman Shemo be'ahava, Melech Ozer u'Moshia u'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'Ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayei hakol atah, Rav le'Hoshia, Mashiv haruach u'morid haGashem, Mechalkel chaim bechesed, Mechayei hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim verofeh cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato, Mishenei afar, Michamocha b'gevurot, Umidomei lach, Melech me'emitz u'mechayeh, U'matzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah lachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayei hakol. Atah kadosh u'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim v'chol yom yalalu chasela, Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh.
Please be seated. I invite you to join me in reading the words of the poem on the wall. We reach for you, our God. We reach for you, our God, from our quiet places. May we stand still for a brief moment and listen to the rain. Stand still for a brief moment and watch the play of sunlight and shadow on the leaves. For a brief moment, listen to the world. Let us stop the wheels of every day to be aware of Shabbat. Find the stillness of the sanctuary which the soul cherishes. Renew the covenant of an ancient people. We need a quiet space to test the balance of our days, the weight of our own needs against the heaviness of the world's demands. The balance is precarious. Steady us with faith. Quiet places and stillness where we will hear our own best impulses speak. Quiet places and stillness from which we will reach out to each other. We will find strength in silence, and with this strength, we will turn again to your service. Our prayer for peace, Shalom Rav, page 60.
Make of us a house for all people. Gather us in hope for all people. Surround us in peace for all people, in wholeness and in love. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha. Shine. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov beinecha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך, בשלומך. Make of us a house for all people, gather us in hope for all people, surround us in peace for all people, in wholeness and in love. Make of us a house for all people, gather us in hope for all people, surround us in peace for all people, in wholeness and in love. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam.
We invite you into a moment of personal reflection.
From the moment you're born, little girl, you will hear, you're so pretty, you're so precious, aren't you a darling? From the moment you're born, little girl, made to think a prince will come save me, forever be happy, just like the movies. I know you don't need a knight in shining armor. It's true that you might need to work harder to prove that you are just as strong, and you can get along without glass slippers, breaking glass ceilings, glass ceilings, glass ceilings, breaking glass ceilings, glass ceilings, glass ceilings. Aren't you expressive?
From the moment you're born, little girl, you should be told, I love what you're up to. I know you can do it. You are a brave one. I know you don't need a knight in shining armor. It's true that you might need to work harder to prove that you are just as strong, and you can get along without glass slippers. Breaking glass ceilings, glass ceilings, glass ceilings. Breaking glass ceilings, glass ceilings, glass ceilings. It doesn't matter what you're wearing or what you look like. Show them the power and belief you feel on the inside, and we'll break glass ceilings. Breaking glass ceilings. Glass ceilings, glass ceilings. Breaking glass ceilings, glass ceilings, glass ceilings. Breaking glass ceilings, glass ceilings, glass ceilings. Breaking glass ceilings.
From the moment you're born, little girl, you will hear, you're so pretty, you're so precious. Beauty is a very interesting literary device in Torah. Torah knows that human beings are a visual species, and therefore, many of the characters that we encounter in Torah and in Tanakh are described as beautiful. But since we are celebrating International Women's Day this week, we're going to focus on some of the matriarchs that the Torah describes as beautiful, and we're going to think about what that beauty is meant to convey. Is it merely just that they're physically attractive, or is the Torah trying to tell us something else? All three of our principal matriarchs, Sarah, Rebecca, and Rachel, are described as beautiful. This is not to leave out Leah, but Leah is explicitly not described as beautiful. We'll get to that. Sarah is described as beautiful, and her beauty is a liability. Abram describes her as beautiful when they are about to encounter the Pharaoh in Egypt during a famine. And he says that because of her beauty, he is vulnerable, because he might be killed so that the Pharaoh can take her as a wife. As a result, he says that she is his sister. The Pharaoh takes her into his harem. During that period, because of Abram's sister Sarah's great beauty, Abram becomes quite wealthy. Eventually, because of some plagues and some dissatisfaction on God's part, Sarah is returned to her husband, but her beauty makes her very vulnerable, and it does end up protecting her husband, allowing him to gain great wealth, and both of them to pass safely through to Canaan. Her daughter-in-law, Rebecca, is also quoted as beautiful. She's a very beautiful maiden, and she's first spied in the text by Abraham's servant, who goes to find a wife for his boss's son, Isaac. What's interesting is that upon seeing Rebecca, we read, the man, meanwhile, stood gazing at her, silently wondering whether Adonai had made his errand successful or not. This moment where the servant is stopped in his tracks by Rebecca's beauty foreshadows a little bit of this burning bush moment that we're going to see with Moses. Something about Rebecca's beauty forces the servant not to pass this woman by, but to really notice her. And not only does the servant recognize her beauty, but subsequently her strength and her graciousness. Her beauty is what allows the servant to pay attention. Now, her daughter-in-law, Rachel, we also know is beautiful, shapely and beautiful, and she captures the attention of Jacob. But her beauty ends up also being a great liability, because we learn that because her sister Leah, who is not described as beautiful, that because she is unloved by Jacob, that Rachel is made to be barren, that the cost of her beauty is infertility. And through that struggle, does she understand a version of yearning that her sister Leah is forced to contend with, because she is always yearning for the love of Jacob. So Rachel learns to yearn for the child that she for so long is unable to have. Her beauty comes with a great cost. Now jump way forward in time to the latest book in the Tanakh, the Scroll of Esther, and we meet Vashti, who is described as beautiful not once but twice in the same verse. Vashti's beauty is dangerous, because Vashti doesn't do what King Ahasuerus wants her to do. And this is what his ministers decide in the wake of this travesty of Queen Vashti not wanting to dance for King Ahasuerus and his ministers. This queen's behavior will make all the wives despise their husbands, as they reflect that King Ahasuerus himself ordered Queen Vashti to be brought before him, but she would not come. This very day, ladies of Persia and Media who have heard of the queen's behavior will cite it to all the majesty's officials, and there will be no end of scorn and provocation. Vashti's beauty is powerful because it makes her a role model, because it makes people listen to her. Her beauty allows her the power to call attention to systems and norms in her society that are broken. That's a dangerous kind of beauty. And subsequently, Esther, who is chosen to serve as the new queen in replacement for Vashti, who was quickly ousted lest she start a storm of angry wives. Esther is beautiful and is told very explicitly by Mordecai when she's first chosen by King Ahasuerus not to reveal her identity, because this beauty needs to be cultivated. This power, her standing vis-a-vis of King Ahasuerus, has to be slowly nurtured until the moment is right for her to be able to deploy herself in protection of her people. And Mordecai is very patient. And when the moment is right and he finally convinces Esther to use her power for good, what does she do? She dresses in her fine robes and waits for the king to notice her. And the king does notice her and invites her and eventually heeds her call to save her people. The difference between the first three matriarchs that we meet, their beauty and the beauty that we ultimately see of Vashti and Esther, is that the first three matriarchs aren't in control of their beauty. Their beauty makes them in many ways vulnerable. Sarah's is actually a liability and forces her into the Pharaoh's harem. Rebecca's beauty allows her to be noticed and sets her up to be this next matriarch. And she does eventually say, Elech, I will go. But it's always men who are in control of her story. And Rachel suffers immense pain because of her beauty. Not till Vashti and Esther do we meet two women who, one, intuitively, Vashti knows how to use her power, and that's dangerous. And Esther, she's taught that her beauty is an asset. This is a literary device, beauty, in the Torah, that's supposed to point us to more than just outward appearances. It's supposed to clue us in to character vulnerability, to plot development, to the machinations of human beings. And it's very physical and visual. And that brings us to the golden calf, because the golden calf is probably a beautiful statue. It's probably something that's really nice for the Israelites to look upon. But we would be remiss if we just thought of the idol as some kind of theological art project of the Israelites. What if, instead of just being a beautiful object, the golden calf is a monument to human vulnerability and fear? What if the golden calf is what's created when a visual people feels lost and needs to communicate with their leadership that they need help? The golden calf is the first instance where we see a people using beauty to help their leaders lead them, to indicate that they need support. And that is another rendering of the golden calf that allows it, instead of just being this example of sinfulness and faithlessness, for it to actually be an example of Betzalel's subsequent ingenuity in how we use beauty to call attention to what's important and what's urgent. And so our matriarchs, our queens, even that golden calf, I think that's a beauty that's far more multifaceted than sometimes our tradition allows us to think about. And I invite all of us to maybe think about the many stories of all the beautiful things in our lives. Shabbat Shalom. We're going to invite the community to please rise as you are able, as our very beautiful ark is open, page 282.
282. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'ateit gedula liyotzeh bereshit, shelo asanu kegoyei haratzot, v'lo samanu kemishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, v'gor aleinu kecho hamonam, v'anachnu משתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא ונאמר בהר אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני ושמו
At this time, we bring into our hearts and into our sacred space the memories of those who have died in recent days and recent weeks, as well as the memories and legacies of those that we remember this Shabbat. If you hear the name of a loved one, we invite you, if you are able, to rise, and you can enact a ritual of memorial at the front of the room by placing stone on slate. We'll begin with the recently departed, those in the period of Shiva, the first 7 days, or Shloshim, the first 30 days since death. We remember Laura Goldfluss, Ruth Krause, Jane Rubinsky, Susan Lappin, Razi Skapoff, and Blossom Fox. Is anyone else in the period of Shiva or Shloshim? Is anyone in the first year of mourning Shana? And we continue with those whose yahrzeits we commemorate this Shabbat. Albert Alexander, Esther Losh Berlin, Lena Bernstein, Solomon Bitterman, George Botwinick, Sylvia Cantor, Dr. Louis Karp, Malcolm Heifetz, Meade Chamberlain, Selim Chatta, Alfred Cohen, Irvin Cohen, Jules Dahlman, Henry Doron, Ralph Dubin, Florica Edinger, Susan Feinberg, Irving S. Friedman, Florence Freed, Jack Friedman, Jennifer Friedman, Patricia Pat Friedman, Samuel N. Goldberg, Shirley Goswell, Marvin Graff, Eva Halpern, Sarah Herbert, Ruth Hirschfield, Marion Hofflich, Ruben Hoffman, Isabella Mundo, Ralph Jacobs, Braden Keel, Rosalind Kleiman, Lizzie Koch, Lynn Koch, Hilda Cook, Edward B. Kovar, Milton Kramer, Ruth Krantz, Jacob Kraus, Sarah Latterman, Dorothy Laufer, Gary Levin, Safira Levitt, Bernice Lewis, Rita Lichtenstein, Bertha Liebeskind, Irving Lipton, Elizabeth Livingston, Myron Paul Lone, Bertram Marks, Helen May Mayer, Esther McGee, Boris Myers, Aaron Miller, Salo Minkin, Essie Mitchell, Dr. Erwin Oreskes, Peter Pale, Shoshana Perlman, Francine Pickard, Marion Pincus, Shirley Pollinger, Morris N. Posner, the Honorable Judge Gilbert Rabin, Herbert Rhine, Bertie Rizzo, Constance Rosen, Dorothy Rosenblatt, Sadie Rosenzweig, Herman H. Rosenthal, Mark Rothko, Paulina Kitsis Rosenthal, Keith L. Sachs, Alan Ellen Schenk, Chester Schiff, Israel Schulman, Carol Schultz, Susan Schweitzer, Martin Siegel, Ron Silver, N. Susan Silvers, Samuel Singer, Helen W. Spalder, Arthur Spiro, Samuel Steinfeld, Jeanette Steinhardt, Pauline Peschke-Solds, Edward Tanzer, Adolf Taub, Herman Teschner, Rose Wilson, Eileen E. Zaglin, Svetlana Zareskaya, Louis Zaretsky. Are there additional loved ones that you are remembering this Shabbat? We invite the community to please rise as you are able for the Mourner's Kaddish on page 294. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, Be'almad ivrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, B'chayachon uv'yomechon uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, Ba'agala uv'izman kariv imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lalmei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudsha barichu, La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, Tushbechata v'nechemata, Ta'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shamaya v'chaim, Halenu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, Hu ya'aseh shalom, Halenu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Oseh shalom bimromav, Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru. Amen.
Zichronam livracha, may their memories be a blessing. You can be seated. A few announcements about what's coming up this Shabbat and beyond. Tomorrow we have services at 10:15, and then the third installment of our 4-installment Shabbat flicks. If you want to watch some Jewish movies from around the world with us tomorrow at 1:30, we'll be watching Neighbors, which talks about a story that takes place in a Syrian border village, and it's a fascinating drama, and we welcome you to join us at 1:30 p.m. And on Sunday, another important movie and opportunity for a talk back sponsored by Shirenu. This is the movie In a Different Key, which follows the mother of an autistic son as she finds the first child ever diagnosed with autism, and he's still living in a small Mississippi town where he was born nearly 90 years ago. And there's going to be a talk back with the filmmakers following that. Our Hebrew spring semester begins in 2 weeks, so if you want to learn some Hebrew with the most incredible teacher, Mel Delo, please sign up. Oop, there goes my light. Thank you. A spooky story. And finally, exciting news. Yesterday we just learned that the first ever Reform rabbi elected to the Israeli Knesset, MK Gilad Kariv, Rabbi Gilad Kariv, will be joining us for Shabbat services next Friday night. So please, it's going to be a fabulous opportunity. There is no more important time to be hearing on the ground what's happening in Israel from somebody who cares as much as we do, not only about protecting the state of Israel, but protecting democracy in the state of Israel. So please join us next Shabbat at 6 p.m. And now I invite you to turn to your neighbors, to greet them, wish them Shabbat Shalom, and maybe tell them something beautiful that you experienced this week.
I experienced a beautiful year, and you're beautiful, and you're beautiful. Oh my gosh, I love your.
What did you see? No, she said, oh, is that what she said?
I know it's
Anyway,
but that's like. Yes, exactly.
That sucked. That's what my day started. I was like, and it's put on this piece of paper that said, all this. Then when I get
yeah, it's like I'm always afraid of those ATMs where you have to leave your card and put it out. It's like, I'm never going to get it back.
I think they might have won yours.
All right, so hopefully you all experienced something beautiful worth telling your neighbor about. We're going to conclude services by lifting a cup, bringing some sweetness into our environment. If you're able, we'll invite you to please rise as you are able for Kiddush, which can be found on page 5 and on the walls.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron למעשה בראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים, כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים בשבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת אמן.
1, 2, 3. Oh, what a beautiful challah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. And to conclude, a little more Miriam songs. Can't get enough dancing.
In case you didn't sing along the first time, you should do it now.
Women dancing with their timbrels, follow Miriam as she sang her song. Sing a song to the one who we've exalted. Miriam and the women danced and danced the whole night long. And Miriam the prophet took her timbrel in her hand, and all the women followed her just as she had planned. And Miriam raised her voice in song, she sang with praise and might. We just lived through a miracle, we're gonna dance tonight. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang her song. Sing a song to the one who we've exalted. Miriam and the women danced and danced the whole night long. Shabbat shalom, everyone.
So fun.
Beautiful. Mazel tov. So